Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will change the way you respond to everything. You are not stressed because of life. You are stressed because you react to everything life throws at you. A message, a comment, a delay, a tone, and just like that, your peace is gone. That is not power. That is conditioning. And today, you're going to break it. You're going to learn how to feel everything and still stay in control. Because the moment you stop reacting is the moment you take your life back. Listen carefully. Most people are not living their lives. They are reacting to them. That's the truth no one tells you. They wake up neutral. Then a message comes in, and their mood drops. A comment appears, and their confidence shakes. A delay happens, and their patience disappears. And just like that, their entire internal state is gone. Not because life is hard, but because they react to everything. You need to understand this clearly. If it controls your reaction, it controls your life. Say it again. If it controls your reaction, it controls your life. That's not philosophy. That's reality. Because every time something external changes how you feel, you've handed over control. And most people do this all day, without noticing, without questioning it, without ever realizing they are not in charge. Think about your last 24 hours. How many times did something small shift your mood? A message, a tone, a delay, a look, something tiny, insignificant. Yet it changed your entire internal world. That's not strength. That's conditioning. You've been trained to react. And here's the dangerous part. You think it's normal. But it's not. It's just common. Let's break it down. You wake up. You feel fine. Then your phone lights up. A message. Short, cold, unexpected. And instantly, your mind starts moving. What did I do? Why are they like this? Did I say something wrong? Your chest tightens. Your thoughts spiral. Your energy drops. Nothing actually happened. Just a message. But your entire state changed. Why? Because you reacted. Because you gave meaning without control. Because you didn't pause. And that moment right there, that's the moment you lost power. You need to understand something most people never learn. Life doesn't control you. Your reactions do. Let me say that again. Life doesn't control you. Your reactions do. And that changes everything. Because if reactions are the problem, then reactions can be trained. That's the key. Not suppressed. Not ignored. Trained. You have a choice. Always. It may not feel like it. It may feel automatic. But that's only because you've repeated the same pattern over and over again. Stimulus, reaction. No pause. No awareness. No control. Just impulse. And impulse is expensive. It costs you. Your energy, your focus, your clarity, your peace. Every single day. Now here's the shift. You don't need to stop feeling. You don't need to become cold. You don't need to disconnect. That's not the goal. The goal is control. Control over what you do after you feel. Because feeling is natural. Reaction is a choice. And most people confuse the two. Let's make this simple. You feel anger. That's natural. But what you do next, that's control. You feel frustration. That's normal. But what you say next, that's control. You feel triggered. That's human. But whether you react immediately or pause, that's control. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Even when it doesn't feel like it. That's the discipline. Not removing emotion, but refusing to be controlled by it. Most people never reach this level. Why? Because reacting feels easier. It feels immediate. It feels satisfying in the moment. You say what you feel. You act on impulse. You release the pressure. And for a second, it feels good. But then comes the cost. Regret. Overthinking. Damage. Lost opportunities. Broken trust. And wasted energy. You don't need more intelligence. You don't need more motivation. You need discipline. Because it's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Let's go back to the example. One message ruins your entire day. That's not because the message was powerful. It's because your reaction was uncontrolled. That's the difference. Two people receive the same message. One spirals. One stays calm. Same stimulus. Different response. Different life. So what separates them? Control. Internal stability. Awareness. And most importantly, the ability to pause. You need to start noticing your reactions. Not judging them. Not suppressing them. Not fighting them. Just noticing. Because awareness is the first step to control. If you don't see it, you can't change it. So here's your first assignment. Simple, but powerful. For the next 24 hours, watch yourself. Every time something triggers you, pause. Don't react immediately. Just notice. What did you feel? What did you want to do? What story did your mind create? Observe it. Because the moment you observe it, you separate from it. And that's where control begins. You are not your reaction. You are the one who chooses it. That's the shift. That's the identity change. Because once you see that clearly, you can never go back. You start catching yourself. Mid-reaction, mid-thought, mid-emotion. And suddenly, you realize something powerful. I don't have to do this. I don't have to respond like this. I don't have to lose control. That's freedom. Not freedom from life, but freedom from automatic behavior. Freedom from being controlled. Freedom from reacting. And once you taste that, everything changes. Your relationships change. Your decisions change. Your confidence changes. Because now, you are no longer at the mercy of every little thing. You are steady. You are grounded. You are in control. But this is just the beginning. Because stopping reaction is only the first step. The deeper problem is what you believe about your emotions. Because right now, you trust them too much. You follow them too quickly. You treat them like truth. And that's where most people go wrong. You've learned how to stop reacting. Now it's time to understand what you're reacting to. Let's get something clear right now. You have been lied to. Not intentionally. Not maliciously. But repeatedly. You were taught that your emotions are truth. That if you feel something, it must mean something real. That if it feels intense, it must be important. That if it feels urgent, you must act. That is the lie. Because emotions are not truth. They are signals. And if you treat signals like commands, you lose control. Say this with me. Feel it. Don't follow it. Again. Feel it. Don't follow it. That's the key. Because the moment you follow every emotion, you become predictable, reactive, controllable. Let's break it down. You feel anger. It rises fast. It feels powerful. It feels justified. Your body tightens. Your thoughts sharpen. Your voice wants to get louder. And in that moment, it feels like you must respond. Like you have to say something. Like silence would be weakness. But here's the truth. Urgency is not accuracy. Just because it feels urgent doesn't mean it's right. Think about how many times you reacted in anger and later realized you were wrong, or you overreacted, or you made it worse. That's because anger doesn't show you truth. It shows you intensity, and intensity can be misleading. Emotions are designed to alert you, not control you. Fear says, pay attention. Anger says, something feels off. Sadness says, something matters. But none of them say, act immediately. That part, you added. That's conditioning. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can feel the emotion without becoming the emotion. That's the discipline. Most people don't understand this. They think, I feel it, so it must be real. No, you feel it, so it must be processed. That's different. Very different. Let's take a real example. You send a message. No reply. Minutes pass. Then an hour. Your mind starts working. They're ignoring me. They don't respect me. I said something wrong. Emotion rises. Anxiety, frustration, doubt. And suddenly, you believe the story. You believe the feeling. You follow it. But what's actually true? You don't know. They could be busy. They could be tired. They could be dealing with something you can't see. But your emotion didn't show you reality. It showed you a possibility. And you treated it like fact. That's the mistake. Feel it. Don't follow it. Because when you follow it, you create problems that didn't exist. You send messages you regret. You assume things that aren't true. You damage your own peace. All because you trusted the wrong thing. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Discipline is what separates feeling from action. Discipline is what gives you space. Discipline is what keeps you grounded when everything inside you wants to react. Let's go deeper. Why do emotions feel so convincing? Because they are physical. You feel them in your chest, in your stomach, in your breathing. They don't feel like thoughts. They feel like reality. And that's why people trust them. But your body reacts faster than your mind. That's biology. Your nervous system is built for survival, not accuracy. It detects threats quickly, even when there is no real danger. That's why a tone can feel like rejection. A silence can feel like abandonment. A comment can feel like attack, even when it's not. Your system is trying to protect you, but protection is not always precision. And if you don't understand that, you'll keep reacting to things that aren't real threats. You have a choice. Pause. Observe. Separate. When you feel something strong, don't trust it immediately. Question it. Slow it down. Create space. Ask yourself, what am I actually feeling? What story am I telling myself? Is this fact or interpretation? That's the work. That's the discipline. Because the goal is not to remove emotion. The goal is to outgrow blind obedience to it. You can feel anger and still stay calm. You can feel fear and still move forward. You can feel discomfort and still remain silent. That's power, not suppression, not avoidance, control. And here's what happens when you master this. You stop being pulled in every direction. You stop reacting to every trigger. You stop making decisions based on temporary feelings. Instead, you become steady, clear, intentional. People will notice. They'll expect you to react, but you won't. They'll try to provoke, but nothing moves you. They'll bring intensity, but you bring control. Because now, you understand something they don't. Feeling is automatic. Following is optional. You don't need to follow every emotion. You don't need to express everything you feel. You don't need to act just because something feels strong. You have a choice. Always. That's the key. So here's your practice. Simple, but not easy. The next time you feel a strong emotion, do nothing. Not forever. Just for a moment. Sit with it. Observe it. Let it rise. Let it peak. Let it pass. And watch what happens. You'll realize something powerful. It doesn't last. It never does. Emotion is a wave. It rises. It peaks. It fades. But when you act at the peak, you extend it. You amplify it. You give it control. When you don't act, you regain control. That's the shift. That's the discipline. That's the difference between reacting and leading your life. Because this entire journey is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming stable. You've stopped reacting automatically. Now you've learned not to blindly trust your emotions, but there's still something missing. Because even when you understand emotions, you can still get pulled in. Why? Because you haven't mastered the space yet. The space between what happens and what you do next. And that space changes everything. You're ready for the next level. There is a moment most people never see. It's small. It's fast. It's easy to miss. But it changes everything. Between what happens and what you do next, there is a gap. And that gap is your power. Say it clearly. The pause is where power lives. Again, the pause is where power lives. That's the key. Because if you don't control that gap, you don't control your life. Most people never enter that space. They go from stimulus to reaction instantly. No pause. No awareness. No choice. Just automatic behavior. Something happens, and they respond immediately. Not because it's right, but because it's familiar. You've done this. We all have. Someone says something you don't like, and before you even think, you respond. Defensive, sharp, reactive, and seconds later, you realize it. That wasn't necessary. I shouldn't have said that. I made it worse. That's what happens when you skip the gap. You act from impulse, not intention. And impulse is expensive. Let's break it down. Two people face the same situation. Same words. Same tone. Same trigger. One reacts immediately. Voice rises. Emotion takes over. The situation escalates. The other pauses. Just for a moment. Breath slows. Thoughts settle. Response becomes intentional. Same situation. Different response. Completely different outcome. That's the power of the gap. Not the situation. Not the words. The response. You have a choice. You always have a choice. But you only access that choice inside the gap. Outside the gap, you're automatic. Inside the gap, you're in control. Most people think control means being strong, being confident, being dominant. No. Control is quiet. Control is subtle. Control is the ability to pause when everything inside you wants to react. That's discipline, not strength, not talent. Discipline. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Because the gap doesn't appear automatically. You create it. Through awareness. Through practice. Through repetition. At first, it feels unnatural. You'll want to react. You'll feel the urge. You'll feel the pressure. But that's exactly when it matters. That's the moment. That's the test. That's where most people fail. And that's where you separate yourself. Let's get practical. Next time something triggers you, pause. Not forever. Just a moment. One breath. 1 second. Maybe 2. That's enough. Because even 1 second breaks the pattern. That's the key. You don't need a long delay. You need a break in the automatic loop. Stimulus, reaction. That's the old pattern. Stimulus, pause, response. That's the new one. And that pause changes everything. Because inside that pause, you can ask a better question. Not, how do I react? But, what do I want from this? That's power. You stop thinking short term. You stop chasing emotional relief. You start thinking long term. Clarity, outcome, direction. You have a choice. Always. But only if you slow down enough to see it. Let's go deeper. Why is the gap so hard to access? Because your brain is wired for speed, not reflection. Your nervous system is designed to react quickly, to protect you, to keep you safe. But here's the problem. Not every situation is a threat. Yet your system treats it like one. A comment feels like an attack. A silence feels like rejection. A disagreement feels like danger. And your body responds instantly. That's why you react. Not because you're weak, but because you're untrained. And training begins with the gap. You don't need to stop your emotions. You don't need to suppress your thoughts. You don't need to change the world. You just need to slow down. Just enough. To choose. That's it. That's the work. Let's make it real. You're in a conversation. Someone challenges you. Your instinct? Defend. Prove. Win. But instead, you pause. You breathe. You let the moment sit. And then you respond calmly. That's an interesting point. No tension. No escalation. No loss of control. Now the dynamic shifts. You control the tone. You control the direction. You control the outcome. Because you controlled the gap. The person who controls the gap controls the situation. Remember that. Most people try to control others. Wrong focus. Control yourself. Specifically, control the space between stimulus and response. That's where influence lives. That's where respect comes from. That's where stability is built. Because people don't trust reactive individuals. They trust steady ones. And steadiness comes from the gap. You have a choice. You always have a choice. But you must create the space to see it. Now here's the truth. This won't feel comfortable. At first. Pausing feels unnatural. It feels like weakness. It feels like hesitation. But it's not. It's control. And over time, it becomes automatic. The gap gets wider. The pause gets easier. The response gets better. You stop reacting. You start choosing. And that changes everything. Because now, you're not living on autopilot. You're not being controlled by every trigger. You're not losing energy to every situation. You're intentional. You're aware. You're in control. That's the goal. Not perfection. Control. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned not to blindly follow emotions. Now you've discovered the gap. The space where everything changes. But knowing the gap exists is not enough. You need a tool. A simple, repeatable action that forces you into that space every time. That's what comes next. You don't need more motivation. You don't need more knowledge. You need a tool. Simple, repeatable, immediate. Because in the moment of pressure, you won't remember long explanations. You need something you can use instantly. That tool is this: the 3-second rule. Say it with me. Pause. Breathe. Choose. Again. Pause. Breathe. Choose. That's the key. When something triggers you, you don't react. You don't speak. You don't type. You don't move. For 3 seconds. 3 seconds sounds small. It's not. It's everything. Because those 3 seconds interrupt the pattern. Your brain runs on loops. Stimulus, reaction. Fast. Automatic. Unconscious. Someone says something. You fire back. Someone delays. You get irritated. Someone ignores you. You spiral. That's the loop. And most people never break it. The 3-second rule breaks it. Immediately. Because when you pause, you send a signal to your brain. We are not in danger. We are in control. And that changes your state. Let's make it real. You receive an email. Sharp tone. Critical. Unexpected. Your first instinct? Respond immediately. Defend yourself. Correct them. Push back. You start typing. Fast. Emotional. Reactive. That email? You will regret it. Maybe not instantly, but later. Now apply the rule. You see the email. You feel the reaction rising. And instead of typing, you pause. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. You breathe. Slow. Controlled. And suddenly, something shifts. The urgency drops. The emotion softens. The clarity returns. And now, you have a choice. You don't need to respond immediately. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need their permission. You can close the email. You can wait. You can come back later. With control. That's the difference. Same situation. Different response. Different outcome. That's the power of 3 seconds. Most people underestimate this. Because it looks simple. Too simple. But simple is what works under pressure. It's not about complexity. It's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about complexity. It's about discipline. You don't rise to your intentions. You fall to your habits. And the 3-second rule becomes your habit. Let's go deeper. Why does this work? Because emotion has a peak. It rises. It spikes. Then it fades. But when you act at the peak, you lock it in. You amplify it. You extend it. When you pause, you let it pass. That's the key. You don't fight the emotion. You outlast it. You have a choice. Always. But only if you give yourself time. 3 seconds gives you that time. Now let's expand this. This isn't just for emails. This is for everything. A conversation. a disagreement, a moment of tension, a comment that hits you. Pause, breathe, choose. Someone interrupts you. Pause, breathe, choose. Someone disrespects you. Pause, breathe, choose. Someone misunderstands you. Pause, breathe, choose. You don't need to react immediately. You don't need to match energy. You don't need to prove anything. You choose your response. That's control. And here's something most people miss. The person who controls the timing controls the interaction. When you slow down, you take control. Reactive people move fast. Controlled people move deliberately. That's the difference. Now let's address the resistance. Because you will feel it. When you pause, it will feel uncomfortable. It will feel unnatural. It will feel like you're holding back. Good. That means you're breaking the pattern. Discomfort is part of discipline. It's not about feeling good. It's about doing what works. And what works is the pause. You have a choice. Always. Even when it feels like you don't. The moment you feel triggered, that's your signal. Not to react, but to pause. Train that. Repeat that. Build that. Because eventually, it becomes automatic. You won't need to remind yourself. You'll just do it. And when that happens, everything changes. You stop saying things you regret. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop giving your energy away. You become stable, consistent, controlled, and people notice. They expect you to react, but you don't. They expect emotion, but you stay calm. They expect escalation, but you stay grounded. That's power. Not loud, not aggressive, quiet, controlled, unshakable, all from 3 seconds. Now here's your assignment. For the next 72 hours, apply the rule. Every time you feel triggered, pause. 3 seconds. No exceptions. Not perfect, but consistent. Because repetition builds identity. You're not trying to act calm. You're becoming someone who is calm. That's the shift. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned not to follow every emotion. You've learned to access the gap. And now, you have a tool. But there's still something that keeps pulling you back. Something deeper. Something automatic. You take things personally. And that is what keeps you reactive. It's time to break that. Let's address the pattern that keeps pulling you back. You pause. You breathe. You try to choose. And then one thing happens. You take it personally. And everything collapses. Understand this clearly. Most of what triggers you has nothing to do with you. Say it out loud. It's not about you. It's about them. Again. It's not about you. It's about them. That's the key. You've been conditioned to interpret everything through yourself. Every tone. Every silence. Every comment. Your mind asks, what does this mean about me? Did I do something wrong? Am I being judged? And just like that, You turn neutral events into personal attacks. That's the problem. Not the situation. The interpretation. Let's make it real. Someone speaks to you with a sharp tone. Immediately, you feel it. Disrespect, tension, defensiveness. Your mind reacts. They are being rude. They don't respect me. I need to respond. But what's actually true? You don't know. They could be stressed. They could be tired. They could be dealing with something you can't see. But you didn't pause. You didn't question. You assumed. And that assumption created your reaction. It's not about you. It's about them. Most people are walking around, carrying their own pressure, their own problems, their own insecurities. And when they speak, you hear it, but you misinterpret it. You think, it's about me. But it's not. It's about their stress, their mood, their internal state. You just happen to be there. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can absorb it or observe it. Absorbing means you take it in. You internalize it. You react. Observing means you see it. You understand it. You stay grounded. That's discipline, not emotion. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Because taking things personally is automatic. It's a habit, a deeply conditioned pattern. But it's not truth. Let's go deeper. Why do you take things personally? Because of identity. When someone challenges your idea, you feel like they're challenging your intelligence. When someone questions your decision, you feel like they're questioning your ability. When someone ignores you, you feel like they're rejecting your worth. You merge their behavior with your identity, and that's where you lose control. Because now, every interaction becomes a threat. Every disagreement becomes personal. Every silence becomes a story, and you react accordingly. But here's the shift. Separate behavior from identity. What someone does is not who you are. What someone says is not your value. What someone feels is not your truth. That's the discipline. You don't need their permission to stay stable. You don't need their approval to stay grounded. You don't need their validation to stay in control. You have a choice. Always. Let's take another example. You send a message. No reply. Time passes. Your mind starts building a story. They're ignoring me. They don't care. I said something wrong. Emotion rises. You feel it. You follow it. But stop. Pause. What else could this mean? They're busy. They forgot. They're dealing with something. 3 different explanations. None of them about you. That's the shift. Because when you expand your interpretation, you reduce your reaction. That's the key. Most emotional reactions are not caused by events. They are caused by meaning. The meaning you assign. Change the meaning, and you change the outcome. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can choose to personalize everything, or you can choose to detach. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you don't absorb what isn't yours. That's strength. You feel it, but you don't carry it. You notice it, but you don't become it. That's control. Now let's be honest. This is not easy. Taking things personally feels natural, immediate, automatic. But automatic doesn't mean correct. You've been trained this way. Through repetition. Through habit. Through years of conditioning. And now, you're retraining. You're building a new pattern. Observe. Don't absorb. Say it again. It's not about you. It's about them. Repeat it until it becomes natural. Until it becomes automatic. Until it replaces your old pattern. Because once you stop taking things personally, something changes. You stop reacting to everything. You stop defending yourself unnecessarily. You stop wasting energy. You become calm, clear, stable, and people notice. They try to provoke, but you don't move. They expect a reaction, but you stay grounded. Because now, you see it. You see their behavior for what it is. Not as an attack, but as information. And information doesn't require emotion. It requires awareness. That's the shift. You've learned to control your reaction. You've learned not to follow emotions. You've learned to create space. Now you've learned not to personalize. But there's still one thing holding most people back. The need to be understood. The need to explain. The need to be seen correctly. And that need keeps you trapped. It's time to release it. Let's confront something uncomfortable. You want to be understood. You want people to see you correctly, to get your intentions, to recognize your effort. And when they don't, something inside you reacts. You explain. You defend. You try again. And again. And again. That's the trap. Because every time you do that, you give your power away. Understand this clearly. Seeking validation is giving others control over your identity. Say it again. Clarity comes from within, not from approval. That's the key. If your peace depends on being understood, then your peace is not yours. It's borrowed. It's conditional. It's fragile. And fragile people react. Think about how much energy you spend trying to be seen correctly, replaying conversations, rewriting explanations, imagining what you should have said. Hours, days, sometimes years, all for one thing, understanding. But here's the truth. You don't need it. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need everyone to see your side. Because they won't. Not all of them. Not all the time. People see through their own lens. Their past. Their beliefs. Their emotions. And you cannot control that. You can explain perfectly and still be misunderstood. That's reality. So what do? You stop chasing it. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can keep explaining, or you can start building. Because explanation doesn't create clarity. Consistency does. Say it again. Clarity comes from within, not from approval. Let's make it real. You make a decision. People question it. They don't understand. They doubt you. Your instinct? Explain. Justify. Prove. You want them to see what you see. You want them to understand your reasoning. You want their approval. But here's what actually happens. You drain your energy. You lose focus. You start doubting yourself. Because now, your clarity depends on them. That's the mistake. You don't need their permission to move forward. You don't need their approval to stay confident. You don't need their understanding to stay stable. You have a choice. Trust yourself, or chase validation. And you can't do both. Because validation is addictive. The more you seek it, the more you need it, the more you depend on it, the less stable you become. And when it's not there, you collapse. That's not strength. That's dependence. Let's go deeper. Why do you want to be understood? Because it feels safe. It feels like acceptance. It feels like control. But it's an illusion. Because even if someone understands you today, they might not tomorrow. And if your identity depends on that, you're constantly unstable. That's exhausting. You don't need that. What you need is internal clarity. Clarity about who you are. Clarity about what you stand for. Clarity about what you're doing. And once you have that, external understanding becomes irrelevant. Not because you don't care, but because you're not dependent. That's the difference. You can still communicate. You can still explain when necessary, but you don't chase it. You don't over-explain. You don't repeat yourself endlessly. You don't try to force understanding, because forcing it is a waste of energy, and energy matters. You only have so much. Every time you explain unnecessarily, you spend it. Every time you defend yourself, you drain it. Every time you chase approval, you lose it. And what do you get in return? Nothing guaranteed. That's the cost. So you change the strategy. Instead of explaining more, you show more. Instead of defending yourself, you stay consistent. Instead of chasing understanding, you build certainty. That's power. Let your actions speak. Let your consistency prove. Let time reveal. You don't need to rush it. You don't need to force it. Because the truth becomes obvious over time. And if someone still doesn't see it, that's fine. Not everyone is meant to understand you. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can keep trying to control how others see you, or you can control how you see yourself. That's the shift. Because once your identity is internal, it becomes stable. No comment can shake it. No misunderstanding can break it. No opinion can control it. That's freedom. Not freedom from people, but freedom from dependence. And that changes everything. You become calm. You become grounded. You become focused. Because now, you're not performing. You're not adjusting. You're not chasing. You're just being. Consistently, clearly, confidently, and that presence is powerful. People feel it. They notice it. They respect it. Not because you explained it, but because you embodied it. That's the difference. You don't need to be understood. You need to be stable. Say it again. Clarity comes from within, not from approval. Repeat it until it becomes truth. Until it replaces your need for validation. Until it becomes your default. Because once you stop chasing understanding, you stop reacting. You stop overthinking. You stop defending. You stop wasting energy. And now, you're in control. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned not to follow emotions. You've learned to create space. You've learned not to take things personally. Now you've learned to release the need for understanding. But there's still something keeping you tied to the past. Unfinished conversations. Unresolved situations. Things that never got closure. And that keeps pulling your energy backward. It's time to let go. There's something quietly draining your energy. Not loudly. Not obviously. But constantly. It's not what's happening right now. It's what never got resolved. The conversation that never happened. The apology that never came. The explanation you're still waiting for. And every day, you go back to it. Replay it. Rebuild it. Rehearse what you would say, if you ever got the chance. That's the trap. You think you need closure, but you don't. Say it clearly. You don't need closure. You need movement. Again. You don't need closure. You need movement. That's the key. Because closure is not something someone gives you. It's something you decide. And as long as you're waiting for it, you're stuck. Let's be honest. You've been waiting for clarity, for validation, for the truth. You tell yourself, if I just understand what happened, I can move on. If they just explain, I'll be okay. If I get closure, I'll finally feel peace. But here's the reality. You've been waiting, and nothing has changed. They moved on, but you didn't. You're still thinking about it, still replaying it, still trying to solve something that is no longer active. That's the cost. Not just emotional, but practical. While you're stuck in the past, your present is being ignored. Your future is being delayed. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can keep waiting, or you can move forward. Because waiting feels like control, but it's not. It's attachment. Attachment to an outcome that may never happen. And that attachment is what's draining you. Let's go deeper. Why do you want closure? Because your mind hates unfinished stories. It wants resolution. It wants meaning. It wants everything to make sense. But life doesn't work like that. Some things end without explanation. Some people leave without warning. Some situations close without closure. And you can't control that. What you can control is your response. That's where your power is. You don't need their explanation. You don't need their apology. You don't need their acknowledgement. You have a choice. You can give yourself what you're waiting for. That's the shift. Instead of asking, when will they give me closure? Ask, what would it look like if I gave it to myself? That's where freedom begins. Let's make it real. A relationship ends. No clear reason. No proper ending. You keep thinking, what went wrong? Was it me? What could I have done differently? You replay conversations. You analyze every detail. You search for answers. But nothing changes. Because the answer is not coming. And even if it did, it wouldn't change the outcome. The relationship is still over. The situation is still done. So what are you really holding on to? The story, the attachment, the need for it to make sense. But here's the truth. It doesn't need to make sense for you to move on. That's the discipline. You accept what happened, not because you like it, but because it's real. You stop asking why. You start asking what now. That's movement. Say it again. You don't need closure. You need movement. Movement is action. Movement is direction. Movement is forward. Closure is static. Closure keeps you looking back. Movement pushes you ahead. And your life is ahead of you, not behind. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can keep replaying the past, or you can start building the future. But you can't do both, because energy is limited. Every time you revisit the past, you spend it. Every time you wait for closure, you lose it. And what do you gain? Nothing. That's the reality. So you change the pattern. You decide, I don't need to understand everything. I don't need answers for everything. I don't need closure to move forward. That's power. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. You stop being controlled by what happened. You start controlling what happens next. That's the shift. And here's something important. Letting go doesn't mean it didn't matter. It mattered. It hurt. It affected you. But you're choosing not to carry it forever. That's strength. You acknowledge it. You accept it. You release it. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. You don't need their permission to move on. You don't need their participation to heal. You don't need their involvement to continue. You have a choice. And that choice is movement. Now let's be honest. This is uncomfortable. Letting go feels like losing. It feels incomplete. It feels unresolved. Good. That's where growth happens. Because you're learning something deeper. You can feel discomfort without reacting to it. And that is the next level. Because most people don't react to situations. They react to discomfort. The discomfort of not knowing. The discomfort of not being heard. The discomfort of unfinished stories. And they try to fix it immediately. But that's where they lose control. You're different now. You've learned to pause. You've learned to observe. You've learned not to personalize. You've learned not to seek validation. Now you've learned to move forward, without closure. But to truly master this, you need one more skill. You need to become comfortable with discomfort itself. Because if you can handle discomfort, you can handle anything. That's where we go next. Let's be direct. You are not reacting to situations. You are reacting to discomfort. That tight feeling in your chest. That pressure in your thoughts. That urge to do something, anything. That's discomfort. And most people can't handle it. So they escape it. Immediately. They speak too fast. They explain too much. They react too quickly. Not because it's right, but because it relieves the feeling. Understand this. Most reactions are not about the situation. They are about escaping discomfort. Say it clearly. You can feel it without acting on it. Again, you can feel it without acting on it. That's the key. Because the moment you can sit with discomfort, you stop being controlled by it. Let's make it real. You're in a conversation. There's tension. Silence appears. That silence feels uncomfortable, heavy, awkward, and instantly, you want to fill it. Say something. Explain something. Break the tension. But why? Because the silence is wrong? No. Because it's uncomfortable. So you speak. Too fast. Too much. Too emotional. And later, you regret it. That's the pattern. Discomfort, reaction, regret. But there's another option. Discomfort, pause, control. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can escape the feeling, or you can sit with it. And sitting with it is where power is built. Let's go deeper. Discomfort is not danger. It just feels like it. Your body reacts. Heart rate increases. Breathing changes. Muscles tighten. Your system is telling you, do something. Fix it. Escape. But here's the truth. You don't have to. You can stay. You can feel it. You can let it pass. Because discomfort is temporary. It rises. It peaks. It fades. But when you react, you extend it. You amplify it. You give it control. When you sit with it, you outlast it. That's discipline, not emotion. Say it again. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Because anyone can act on impulse. That's easy. But holding still? That's hard. Staying silent when you want to speak? That's hard. Not reacting when you feel pressure? That's hard. But that's where control is built. You have a choice. Always. And the choice is simple. Act or observe. React or endure. Escape or grow. Because every time you sit with discomfort, you strengthen something. Your patience. Your control. Your identity. You become someone who doesn't break under pressure. And that changes everything. Let's take another example. Someone criticizes you. directly, publicly. You feel it. Heat, tension, the urge to respond. You want to defend, correct, push back. That's discomfort. And most people react immediately. But you don't. You pause. You breathe. You sit with it. You let the feeling exist, without acting on it. And then, you respond calmly. Or maybe, you don't respond at all. That's control. Not because you suppressed the emotion, but because you didn't obey it. You felt it, but you didn't follow it. That's the difference. You can feel it, without acting on it. Repeat that until it becomes natural. Because once you master this, you stop being reactive. You stop making decisions from discomfort. You stop saying things you regret. You stop escalating situations unnecessarily. You become stable. And stability is rare. Most people are controlled by how they feel. You're learning to control what you do. That's power. Now let's talk about resistance. Because you will feel it. Discomfort is uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel easy. But that's not the point. Growth doesn't feel good. Control doesn't feel easy. Discipline doesn't feel natural. At first. But over time, it becomes your default. You stop fearing discomfort. You stop escaping it. You start using it. Because now, discomfort is not a threat. It's a signal. A signal to pause. A signal to observe. A signal to stay in control. That's the shift. You don't need to eliminate discomfort. You need to outgrow your reaction to it. You have a choice. Always. And every time you choose to sit with discomfort, you become stronger. Not louder. Not more aggressive. Stronger. Calmer. More grounded. More in control. That's the goal. Because life will always create discomfort. Always. You can't remove it. You can't avoid it. You can't control it. But you can control yourself. That's the work. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned not to follow emotions. You've learned to create space. You've learned not to personalize. You've learned not to seek validation. You've learned to move without closure. Now you've learned to sit with discomfort. But there's one more trap. The need to be right. The need to win. The need to prove. And that pulls you back into reaction. It's time to let that go. Let's be honest. You don't just want to be heard. You want to be right. You want to prove your point. You want to correct them. You want to win. And every time you feel challenged, something inside you activates. Your voice tightens. Your thoughts speed up. Your tone changes. You're no longer communicating. You're competing. That's the trap. Because in that moment, you lose control. Say it clearly. You don't need to win. You need to stay steady. Again. You don't need to win. You need to stay steady. That's the key. Most people don't understand this. They think winning an argument is power. It's not. Winning an argument often means You lost your calm. You lost your clarity. You lost your control. And those losses are far more expensive than being right. Let's break it down. You're in a discussion. Someone disagrees with you. Your instinct? Correct them. Defend your position. Push harder. You raise your voice. You sharpen your tone. You escalate. And maybe you win. They back down. They stop talking. They give up. But what did you actually win? Respect? No. Trust? No. Control? Definitely not. Because the moment you became emotional, you lost control of yourself. And self-control is the only control that matters. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can engage to win, or engage to understand. You can escalate, or you can stabilize. Because the calm person controls the room, not the loud one, not the aggressive one, not the reactive one, the calm one. Think about it. In any tense situation, who do people trust? The person shouting, or the person steady? The one reacting, or the one observing? The one trying to win, or the one staying grounded? You already know the answer. Because calm is authority. Say it again. You don't need to win. You need to stay steady. Let's go deeper. Why do you feel the need to win? Because your ego is involved. It feels like, if you're wrong, you lose. If they disagree, you're threatened. If you don't respond, you're weak. But that's not truth. That's ego. And ego is reactive. It needs validation. It needs control. It needs to be right. But control doesn't come from being right. It comes from being steady. That's discipline, not emotion. Say it again. It's not about being right. It's about discipline. Because discipline allows you to step back, to observe, to choose your response, instead of reacting automatically. Let's make it practical. Someone challenges your idea. Publicly. Your instinct? Defend. Immediately. But instead, you pause. You breathe. You stay calm. You respond with control. That's a valid perspective. Let's explore that. No tension. No escalation. No loss of control. And now, the dynamic shifts. You're not defending. You're leading. You're not reacting. You're directing. Because you stayed steady. That's power. Now here's something important. Not every argument is worth your energy. Most are not. People argue for different reasons. To be right. To protect their ego. To release emotion. Rarely. To find truth. So why would you invest your energy in that? You don't need to. You have a choice. You can engage. Or you can disengage. You can respond. Or you can stay silent. You don't need their permission to walk away. You don't need their approval to stay calm. You don't need their agreement to stay grounded. That's the shift. Because once you stop trying to win, you stop reacting. You stop escalating. You stop draining yourself. You conserve your energy. And energy is everything. Every argument costs something. Time, focus, emotional stability, and most of the time, it's not worth it. So you become selective. You choose your battles. You choose your responses. You choose your energy. That's discipline. Not avoiding conflict. Controlling engagement. Because there's a difference. Avoidance is fear. Control is strength. You're not running away. You're choosing not to waste your energy. That's power. Let's be clear. This doesn't mean you never speak up. You will. But when you do, it comes from clarity, not emotion. It comes from intention, not impulse. It comes from control, not reaction. That's the difference. You have a choice. Always. You can prove a point, or you can protect your peace. You can win the moment, or you can win your life. Because long-term stability is more valuable than short-term victory. Say it again. You don't need to win. You need to stay steady. Repeat it until it becomes your default. Because once you internalize this, you become different. You stop reacting to every disagreement. You stop engaging in useless debates. You stop trying to prove yourself. And you become calm, grounded, unshakable. That's the goal. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned not to follow emotions. You've learned to create space. You've learned not to personalize. You've learned not to seek validation. You've learned to move without closure. You've learned to handle discomfort. Now you've learned to stop trying to win. But there's one final layer. The foundation of everything. The thing that determines whether you stay in control or lose it. Your energy. How you protect it. How you use it. How you manage it. Because without energy, none of this works. It's time to understand that. Let's get to the foundation. Everything you've learned so far. Your pause, your control, your discipline, depends on one thing. Energy. If your energy is low, you react. If your energy is scattered, you react. If your energy is drained, you react. That's the truth. You don't lose control because you don't know better. You lose control because you're depleted. So understand this clearly. Your energy is your most valuable resource. More valuable than time. More valuable than attention. Because without energy, you can't control anything. Say it again. Not everything deserves your attention. Again. Not everything deserves your attention. That's the key. Because where your attention goes, your energy follows. And most people give their attention to everything. Every message, every comment, every opinion, every distraction. They react to everything. They engage with everything. They absorb everything. And by the end of the day, they're exhausted. Not because they worked hard, but because they reacted too much. That's the problem. You don't need more energy. You need better boundaries. You have a choice. You always have a choice. You can give your energy away, or you can protect it. Because once it's gone, It's hard to recover. Let's make it real. You wake up. First thing you do? Check your phone. Messages. Notifications. News. Before your day even starts, your mind is already reacting. Someone's opinion affects you. Something you read irritates you. Something you see distracts you. And just like that, your energy is scattered. You didn't choose that. You allowed it. That's the shift. It's not about what's happening. It's about what you allow. You don't need to respond to everything. You don't need to engage with everything. You don't need to care about everything. That's discipline. Say it again. It's not about availability. It's about discipline. Because successful people understand this. They ignore more than they engage. They don't react to every message. They don't respond to every opinion. They don't give attention to everything. They are selective. And that's why they stay in control. Because attention is currency. And energy is the cost. Every time you engage, you spend something. So you ask yourself, is this worth my energy? That question alone will change your life. Because most things are not. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every message needs an answer. Not every situation requires your attention. You have a choice. You can engage, or you can ignore. And ignoring is a skill. Most people think ignoring is weakness. It's not. It's control. Because ignoring means you decided this is not worth your energy. That's power. Let's go deeper. Energy is not just physical. It's mental. It's emotional. Every thought you entertain costs energy. Every reaction you have costs energy. Every situation you engage with costs energy. And if you're not careful, you'll spend it on things that don't matter. That's why you feel drained. Not because life is hard, but because you're engaging with everything. So you change the pattern. You become selective. You choose where your attention goes. You choose what you respond to. You choose what you ignore. That's discipline. Because you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to respond to everything. You don't need their permission to stay focused. You have a choice. Always. Let's make it practical. Someone sends a message. It triggers you. Your instinct? Respond immediately. But instead, you pause. You ask, is this worth my energy? If the answer is no, you don't respond. That's control. Someone says something about you. Negative. Unfair. Your instinct? Defend yourself. But instead, you ask, does this matter long term? If it doesn't, you ignore it. That's control. Because not everything deserves your attention. Say it again. Not everything deserves your attention. Repeat it until it becomes automatic. Because once you understand this, your life becomes quieter. Less noise. Less reaction. Less stress. More focus. More clarity. More control. That's the result. You stop reacting to everything. You start choosing what matters. And that changes everything. Because now, your energy is directed, not scattered. And directed energy creates results. Scattered energy creates chaos. You have a choice. You can live reactively, or you can live intentionally. You can give your energy away, or you can protect it. That's the difference. And once you master this, everything else becomes easier. Your reactions decrease. Your clarity increases. Your control becomes natural. Because now, you're not just reacting less. You're engaging less. And that is the highest level of control. You've learned everything. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned not to follow emotions. You've learned to create space. You've learned not to personalize. You've learned not to seek validation. You've learned to move without closure. You've learned to handle discomfort. You've learned to stop trying to win. Now you've learned to protect your energy. This is the foundation. Because once your energy is protected, your control is sustainable. And when your control is sustainable, your life changes. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer controlled. You are no longer drained. You are steady. You are intentional. You are in control. And that is where real power lives. You've heard it now. Not once. Not twice. But enough times to understand this truth. Your problem was never life. Your problem was your reaction to life. And now, you see it. You see the pause. You see the choice. You see the power that has always been yours. You don't need to react anymore. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need closure from people who already left. What you need is control. Control over your response. Control over your attention. Control over your energy. And starting today, you practice. You pause. You breathe. You choose. Not once. Not sometimes. Every single time life tests you. Because it will. And when it does, you will not react. You will respond. That is your challenge. For the next 72 hours. Pause before every emotional reaction. Let one misunderstanding exist. Walk away from one useless argument. Do that, and you will feel the shift. Not in the world, but in yourself. And that is where real power begins.